What's up, everybody? A very happy Wednesday night here on the East Coast, Wednesday afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. Refuse to Lose podcast, Brady Farkas with you from Roundtable Sports. A reminder, this podcast comes out every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday during the regular season. We come on as needed in the off season, although we still keep it to at least 2 days a week. So far, we've made it 3 days a week every single day of the every single week of the off season, except for the week we took off at Thanksgiving. Appreciate anyone who was with us watching live, either on X or on YouTube. This podcast will also be uploaded to Apple Podcasts and Spotify right after. Winter meetings coming to an end tonight. Everybody's going to leave Orlando tomorrow, and we'll head back into the off season. I think once tomorrow happens, or once everybody leaves tomorrow, we will see some deals trickle in here before the Christmas holiday. If it doesn't happen by the Christmas holiday, I think that basically we're going to be dormant until after the new year. Now, once the new year hits, I think things will pick back up again, given that spring training will be a month and a half away. World Baseball Classic. People will want to know things, kind of how their season's going to line up earlier this year than others. So I think we'll have about a week and a half period where things are pretty dead. But after that, I think we will see some things happen between tomorrow and Christmas. And then once New Year's happens, I think we'll see a bunch of stuff. Reminder, all of our written content is available at Roundtable Sports, marinersroundtable.com. I want to thank everybody. I put out the call for you to join our free community. If you look over my shoulder here, you will see a QR code. That will take you to marinersroundtable.com. If you have not yet, join our community. Go to the website, just hit join. It is free to do so. You will no subscriptions, no paywalls. All of our content is there. Myself and Taryn Kovac appreciate everybody who has done it. We hit the 100 community member mark the other day. Now it's time to just keep growing. This is how we make our living. You reading our stuff, you listening to our stuff, knowing that our site exists, and then spreading the word. So we appreciate everybody who has done it already and those of you that will do it in the future. We'll keep it here probably a little shorter, maybe 45 minutes or so. Talk about the winter meetings, the latest of what we're hearing. And Danny Vietti of CBS Sports is going to stop by. Very excited to talk with him. A great follow on social media. And he actually knows one of the Mariners' new coaches can give us some of the insight there. So Danny Vietti will stop by. Again, you can get in if you're watching live on YouTube or on X with your comments. I will take them and react to them as well and answer any questions. And again, this podcast will be put out on the audio side only after we are done here live. Without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
Again, as we record this, the winter meetings are basically wrapping up. I'm not discounting the idea that something could happen after we get off the air, but by and large, the winter meetings are wrapping up and everybody's getting ready to leave. We have seen several big deals go down over the course of the winter meetings, although none of them involved the Mariners. The Mariners have gotten out in front of the market in bringing back Josh Naylor and trading for Jose Ferrer, but none of what's happened in Orlando has involved the M's. We did see Edwin Diaz go to the Dodgers, Pete Alonso go to the Orioles, Kyle Schwarber back to the Phillies. I guess all in all, as Mariners fans, we actually need to be happy about what has gone down. How things have happened have actually worked out relatively in the Mariners' favor so far. I mean, Kyle Schwarber, one of the best hitters in the league, does not go to the American League, right? Kyle Schwarber does not go to the American League. He does not sign with the Blue Jays. He does not sign with the Yankees. He does not go back to the Red Sox. The Mariners would not have to worry about him in the playoffs. In the regular season, yes, one series with the Phillies will be tough, but they don't have to worry about playing him twice a year or 2 series a year in the AL. They don't have to see him in the playoffs. That's a win. Edwin Diaz, one of the best closers in the league, does not enter the American League. I thought when the Yankees lost Devin Williams, I thought they were going to step up and try to get Diaz. They didn't. So even though he goes to the Dodgers and even though that stinks, you don't have to worry about him, by and large, until the World Series. And if the Mariners get there, I will take my chances at that point. So they don't have to deal with Schwarber until the World Series. They don't have to deal with Diaz until the World Series. And as far as Pete Alonso to the Orioles goes, he didn't end up in Boston, who's a better team than Baltimore, in my opinion. And he didn't go to a team in the division who the Mariners directly compete with. He didn't end up with the A's, the Astros, the Rangers, the Angels. That is a win as well. And Pete Alonso in Baltimore makes Baltimore better, which makes that division better, which makes that division harder to win and harder to win in. And look, if Pete Alonso steals away a win or two from the Red Sox, from the Blue Jays, from the Yankees, that makes it a little easier for the Mariners to get a better seed in the playoffs. And you think that's hyperbole and you think that is, picking out needles in a haystack. It's not. We are talking about a Mariners team in 2025 that missed out on playing games 6 and 7 of the ALCS at home. The Mariners lost games 6 and 7 of the ALCS on the road. The goal is to get the number 1 seed and have games 6 and 7, should you need them again, at home in your ballpark. So if you are looking to do that in 2026, and that is the goal, it's going to come down to little margins. And if Pete Alonso can help the Orioles knock the Blue Jays from 94 wins to 92, that could be all it takes to get the Mariners the number 1 seed. If he can knock the Yankees down a win or two, knock the Red Sox down a win or two, you're talking about easier tiebreakers for the Mariners, and you're talking about the ability to play games 6 and 7 at home. So far, the Mariners haven't done anything at the winter meetings, but I think they have benefited largely from what has happened to this point. Again, Diaz and Schwarber stay in the National League. They will battle it out against each other. They won't impact the Mariners really at all until the World Series. Alonso goes to Baltimore, and yes, those 2 series against the Orioles become harder for the M's. But again, if he takes wins away from some of the upper echelon competition in the AL East, that makes life easier for the Mariners come tiebreaker scenarios and come playoff time. And that is where we're at right now. These should be the goals, and this should be the way we're talking. We're talking about the Mariners trying to win the division again. We're talking about them trying to go from the number 2 seed to the number 1 seed. They don't need to make a big jump, but they need to make a jump. And you can do that a couple of different ways. You can make the jump, or those around you can get knocked down. And Pete Alonso has a chance to knock down those around them. So that is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. People getting in on the text line. I think Baltimore will be back to being good next year. I agree with you. So if they are good, well, look, makes it tougher for the Mariners to beat them 6 or 7 times in the regular season. But if they are good, they can knock the Yankees, Blue Jays, and Red Sox down. I'm fine with that division being a gauntlet and the Mariners staying to the outside of it. People getting in on Polanco. We'll talk about Polanco in 1 second here. All right, let's just go there. Give me my sounder. On the Mariners front, right? We've talked about everybody else. On the Mariners front, I would say as the winter meetings get close to ending here in a matter of hours, I would say things are simmering for the Mariners. They're not at a boil, but based on everything we hear, they are simmering. We know the Mariners want Polanco. It is not done yet. We had heard that maybe he would sign quickly. We had heard that maybe it would happen before the meetings end. It has not happened yet. We're going to talk with Buster Olney of ESPN tomorrow. It won't be a full podcast, but it will just be the Buster interview. We will talk with him about Polanco and what he's hearing. And we are still hearing kind of scuttle about the Mariners and Ketel Marte and the Mariners and Brendan Donovan. I will reiterate what I said the other day when we came on Monday night and podcasted. I said this, and I stick to it now. I think the Mariners are going to get Jorge Polanco back. I do. His group wants 4 years. We know the Mariners have come in with 2. I think it's going to end up at 3. It's just a question of how we get there. Is it 3 years and the 3rd year is a mutual option, which is sure to be declined but has a high buyout and makes Polanco happy from a money perspective? Is it 3 years and it's a vesting option that's relatively easy for him to hit? So, he kind of feels like he's going to have it in the bag to get that 3rd year. I don't know how. Or do the Mariners just go to 3 guaranteed years? I don't know. but I think it's going to happen, and I think it's going to be 3 years. So I think they'll bring Polanco back. I think he'll play mostly DH. I think he will have some combination of second base and first base, and if they absolutely needed to, third base, especially against left-handers, I think you'll see him in the field. That is how I foresee Jorge Polanco's kind of arc with the Mariners going. He'll sign. He'll play a lot. He'll be an integral part of the lineup. He'll be the primary DH, but he will play in the field, especially against lefties. That is how I see things right now. The thing I see a lot of on social media that I want to address right now is this. If the Mariners go through the offseason and their, quote, only moves are re-signing Josh Naylor, re-signing Jorge Polanco, bringing in a backup catcher, trading for Jose Ferrer, and acquiring another bullpen arm, I would consider that a good offseason. A lot of you think that that would be a less than offseason. A lot of you think that would be a poor offseason. A lot of you say that would not be enough. If the Mariners do those things, bring back Naylor, bring back Polanco, acquire Ferrer, get another reliever, and bring in a backup catcher, Mitch Garver or someone else, I would consider that to be a good offseason. You would have kept the offense mostly together. You would have gotten 2 bullpen arms, at least the one we know so far, and Ferrer has a chance to be elite. That, to me, would be a good offseason. The thing that most of you want, the thing that I think most of you are saying, the thing that I want, is we all want the Mariners to have a great offseason. If the Mariners do what I just outlined, I would be content. In fact, I would even be happy if they do what I just outlined. But if you want to be thrilled, if you want to go from good to great, I talk about the margins being the way you get from the 2 seed to the 1 seed. If you want to increase those margins or better your margins, having a great offseason is the way to do it. And that is where I think you still hear the conversation about Marte. You still hear the conversation about Brendan Donovan. If you were to acquire one of those two, that is how you go from a good offseason to a great one. So if the Mariners, quote, only do the things I outlined, I think it's good. And I would ultimately show up to Peoria in the middle of February when I'm scheduled to get there, and I would be happy with what they did. But if they go beyond that, they can make it great. They can make themselves a separator. They can put themselves back on the playing field with Toronto. And the way you look at it, the opportunity to get to the World Series would be increased. And that is ultimately the goal. We talked a lot about Ketel Marte on Monday's episode. Let me talk about Brendan Donovan here for a moment. If you are looking for the Mariners to go from good to great this offseason, I think I lean towards them acquiring Brendan Donovan and not Ketel Marte. Now, let me make this clear. I am not as high on Brendan Donovan as others are. I think that Cole Young will eventually become Brendan Donovan, but based on everything, I think acquiring Brendan Donovan makes more sense than acquiring Ketel Marte. If we're acquiring the extra piece to go from good to great, to me, Brendan Donovan makes the most sense. I know the St. Louis Cardinals want young pitching. Okay, I did radio in New England for 8 years. I covered Chaim Bloom's tenure with the Boston Red Sox in its entirety. He is now running the front office for the Cardinals. I know, and he knows, that he wants pitching. So he's going to come to the Mariners and ask for pitching, and it's going to hurt to get rid of it, as I've told you. However, knowing that Brendan Donovan has only 2 years of team control left, and not the 5 or 6 that Ketel Marte has left, I'd like to think the Mariners can get by with giving the Cardinals only one of their minor league pitchers. The Cardinals are not going to compete this year. The Cardinals are not going to compete next year. The Cardinals, therefore, should have no interest in stealing from the Mariners' major league rotation. They should have no interest in Bryce Miller. They should have no interest in Brian Wu. They should be looking at the guys who are in the minor leagues, who are going to come up at a time when they are next ready to compete, which is probably 2028 at the earliest. So, acquiring Donovan allows you to stay away from your major league staff. 2, given that Donovan has only 2 years left, I'd like to think you can get by with only giving up one of the young pitchers. I would prefer it not be Ryan Sloan. If it was Cade Anderson or Durangelo Saintia, I would probably get over it and I would probably live with it. But it can only be one of them. I'd also like to think that if the Mariners were to give up one of those young pitchers, they could avoid giving up another piece that would really hurt. Again, I know Chaim Bloom. I know that he wants pitching. I know that he wants guys who are in the minor leagues but kind of close-ish to the majors, maybe 2 years away from the majors. When they traded Sonny Gray, excuse me, who had 1 year left of team control, he got Boston's number 5 prospect. Okay? And he got Richard Fitz, who's just kind of a serviceable major league arm, right? That was for 1 year of Sonny Gray. For 2 years of Brendan Donovan, if the Mariners gave up one of their top pitching prospects, who's in the top 10, and their top 10 is better than Boston's top 10, I'd like to think they could get away with giving away something else that wasn't super painful. Someone else in the top 30, sure. But I don't think it would be something that we'd all be crying over. The pitcher they have to give up, we'll be crying over. But if it's somebody else, I'd like to think that Chaim Bloom is not going to rake you over the coals for it. So if we're talking about going from good to great in this offseason, I think Brendan Donovan is the way to go. I think it makes the most sense. I think it costs the least amount of players to make a deal happen. Ketel Marte is going to take you 3 or 4 or 5 players, and some of which are on your major league roster. Brendan Donovan will cost you prospects, probably one elite one, and I'd like to think that that will be it. So if I am leaning towards one of these deals to put you over the hump, I would lean Brendan Donovan, even though I am not as enamored with him as everybody else is. But of course, there are things to like. A near 290 batting average, a very low strikeout rate, I believe 13%, the ability to play second, the ability to play the outfield. They could fit Jorge Polanco into a lineup that features Brendan Donovan, right? Polanco can play second on this day, and Donovan can play right, and Robles can get a day off. Whatever it is, the Mariners can find a combination that works with having both Polanco and Donovan. And if I'm getting greedy, I think maybe there is a chance for the Mariners to also keep Cole Young in all of this for a few reasons. Mainly, the Cardinals have a Gold Glove winning shortstop in Mason Wynn already. The Cardinals have a top prospect, one of the top prospects in baseball, who is just about to be major league ready, in J.J. Weatherholt. If the Cardinals acquired Cole Young, J.J. Weatherholt has, a path to play third base, sure. But if they don't acquire Cole Young, then he can play up the middle where he's accustomed to playing and play second base with Mason Wynn. And that's the building block of the Cardinals' future. So maybe I don't want to give up on Cole Young, but maybe we're in a position where the Cardinals want the pitching and they don't need the middle infielder, or they don't want the middle infielder. And the Mariners have an opportunity to keep Cole Young, which is something that I am interested in doing. I want to keep Cole Young. If you want to acquire Donovan, make him the starter, I think there is a world where Cole Young can go back to AAA, get seasoned and come back up, or I think there's even a possibility that Cole Young can become a utility player for this team and become useful that way. Playing a little bit at second, a little bit at short. Can he learn third? Can he be a pinch hitter? Can he be a guy off the bench? I think that that possibility exists, maybe more than I gave it credit for at the beginning of the offseason. So I think Polanco's going to happen. I think Donovan or Marte still could happen. I would just lean Donovan for all of the reasons I've outlined. Giving up a top flight pitching prospect would very much hurt, but I think there is a chance that it would just be the one and that they would be able to keep Cole Young. You can get in here on the text line on YouTube or on X. Text says, you think they could get Polanco and Donovan? I think it's possible. I think it's possible. Not likely. I'm not guaranteeing it. And I'll be honest, I am not in Orlando at the winter meetings right now. I talked to some people who are. I don't claim to have on-the-ground sources on all of this stuff. This is just what I am thinking. I think the Mariners are ready to be aggressive. I think they are ready to move prospects in the right deal. I don't think Ketel Marte is the right deal. Dealing from the major league roster and the prospect pool seems foolish to me. Dealing for Donovan and only in quotes, having to give up from the prospect pool mostly, that makes more sense. Polanco is obviously the first choice. They want him back. I think there is a chance they could get Donovan as well. Because, I mean, let's just play this in our head, right? Polanco's the DH. Donovan's at second. You would need a bench infielder. Maybe that bench infielder is Cole Young. Maybe it's Leo Rivas. Maybe it is Ryan Bliss. And then you have the outfield in which Robles is there with a Rosarena and Julio. Well, on any given day, they could put Polanco at second. They could put Donovan in right, and they could give one of those outfielders a day off. They could put Polanco at first. They could put Donovan at DH. They could give Naylor a day off. I think the combinations can work. Cole Young is the guy who is most affected by bringing in Polanco and Donovan. No doubt, most affected is Cole Young. But I think there's a world where maybe the Cardinals don't want or need him, and the Mariners have a chance to continue to let him develop. I think it's possible. I would be interested in exploring that world because I don't want to see Cole Young in 3 years become Brendan Donovan and everybody wondering why the Mariners gave up on him. I think there's a chance they could find a way to keep him. All right, let's talk about third base. I have felt this all along. Ryan Divish and Adam Jude confirmed it. The Mariners are not really interested in going out on the third base market. The reason being is they are committed to the DH and second base market, right? They're not going to add players at second and third. They're just not. So I think they're going to get Polanco back. That shores up DH and does something with second. I think they have a chance to get Donovan, which would further things at second. And third base, I think they're going to go untouched. They're going to go into spring training with Colt Emerson and with Ben Williamson, and they're going to see who wins the battle. And I think they're content with doing that. And you know what? If they bring back Polanco and if they were to get Donovan, I would be okay with that too. I don't need them to go spend at every single position. I would like certainty in the lineup. I dislike uncertainty. And a world where Cole Young is your starter at second and Ben Williamson is your starter at third, or Colt Emerson is your starter at third, there is uncertainty there. That would make me somewhat nervous. But if you can get finality at second, I don't need finality at third. I understand that not every position can have an established star to it. Okay, not every position can. So if the Mariners do what they want to do at DH and second, then they're not going to attack third. If they lose out on Polanco, if they don't get Marte or Donovan, then that is where I start to think you would see them kind of pivot back to a Eugenio Suarez who could play third, could do a little bit at first, could be a DH type. Like, I think they would revisit third if they strike out on Polanco and all of the second base trade targets. I don't think they're going after Gino like as a first option here. I think he is a fallback for them and kind of a deep fallback for them. So Emerson and Williamson would be the top choices at third. Polanco is the number one priority, and I think Donovan or Marte are the extra possibilities. So third base is down the list for the Mariners. I have been kind of poo-pooing the idea that Colt Emerson would make the Major League roster. I am starting to see a path now to it happening, as I just told you. They're not going to go sign a third baseman to play third base every day. They're going to give it to one of these guys. Emerson's going to have a chance to win it, same as Williamson's going to have a chance to win it. And maybe Ben Williamson does. And he comes up when he plays great defense and he hits 240 and he hits singles to right field a bunch and he maybe shows a little bit more doubles power. Maybe that happens. Or maybe Emerson comes up and is ready to go from day one. I don't know, but I believe that is going to be the case. So if you're looking for where the Mariners are at, all eyes are on Polanco, and then anything above that, I think is a second base trade target. I don't think they're looking to do things in the outfield. They don't need to. They have 3 starters there, plus Raley, plus Canzone. That's too many, right? Or that's kind of the max. They also then have Ryland Thomas in AAA. You look at the infield, they have a bunch of these utility types. Miles Mastroboni is still here. Bliss, Rivas. Okay, I think they could be willing to, looking to upgrade their infield, and Polanco's the number one choice. Third base, I don't think they're going to touch. I think they're coming down to Williamson and Emerson, and we will see what happens. Okay, and we will see what happens. All right, I want to go out to the phone line now, and I want to bring on Danny Vietti. He is a social media manager at CBS Sports. He is a great follow on social media. He is also the host of the Wake and Rake podcast with former World Series, well, I guess not former, but with World Series champion and former Red Sox infielder Will Middlebrooks. And he also knows one of the new Mariners coaching hires, Jacob McKinley. So we're bringing on Danny to talk about all of that. Yes, now we've got Danny on the phone line. Like I said, he hosts the Wake and Rake podcast with Will Middlebrooks. I've actually tried on Will Middlebrooks' World Series ring. Danny, thanks for being with us, my friend. How are you?
Hold on. I need some backstory on that one. First of all, I'm doing well, but that's secondary to this story. I need to hear this.
Yes, so I did radio in New England for 8 years and covered the Red Sox. We were a Red Sox radio station affiliate. I'm friends with some of the guys at Neston, where Will is now doing television work, and went and hung out in the Neston studio. Red Sox Mariners in 23. Mariners lost on a walk-off grand slam. Franchi Cordero off of Andres Munoz. So the highlight of the day was trying on Will Middlebrooks' World Series ring in about the 4th inning or so.
He doesn't even let me get close to it. So you clearly are a lot closer with my co-host than even I am.
I will post the picture on social media to further prove the point and make you jealous then. But Will's a great guy. You guys do a great work, and Will does a great job on TV over at Neston also. And you're a great follow on social media. So, look, I want to ask you something very specific. I'll get to that in a moment. But as we kind of continue our winter meetings conversation, let me ask you a generic Mariners question. Your thoughts on the Mariners and Ketel Marte. Where do you land on this?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because Ketel was originally in your guys' system before trading him away to Arizona. So it's always like it's like when you guys brought back Eugenio Suarez. It's like, okay, you always want to assess what originally happened and what you gave up and what eventually transpired. A little bit of a different situation here because Ketel obviously wasn't a Eugenio Suarez, at least where he was at in his career. But I think more so than anything, I think Seattle just continuing to put their foot on the gas pedal is what's more important than anything. I personally have been really critical of that front office, especially before this year. They've been invited to the big boys table for years. They just haven't been willing to spend money with the big boys, Dodgers, Red Sox, Yankees, Mets. But they've had this starting rotation and bullpen that is World Series capable. They haven't been able to add to it offensively. You have Julio Rodriguez in his mid-20s. You have Cal Raleigh in his mid-20s. They're in the primes of their careers. And the front office did a good job of stepping up and adding Josh Naylor, Suarez. They did get Randy Arozarena a year and a half ago. They deserve a lot of credit for that. But the thing that I've realized over sports is when you have a really good year, if you're not moving forward afterwards, you're moving backwards. So Seattle, and by Seattle, I mean their front office, if they become too content with where they're at and they just kind of hope to find lightning in a bottle one season again with the exact same roster, I worry about that. And it seems like this front office, with the extension of Josh Naylor, it seems like they're willing to keep their foot on the gas pedal to continue to try and move forward.
If they end the offseason with Naylor, Jose Ferrer, the trade acquisition from the Nationals in the bullpen, and Jorge Polanco again, will you consider that a solid offseason or too much of the same?
Nah, that's too much of the same. You got to add to it. I mean, this rotation is fine. So the rotation's good. It's intact. It's under team control for another at least 2 to 3 years for the most part. The exception, I think Luis Castillo probably has a little less on his deal than some of the other team control guys. But starting rotation, you're good. Bullpen-wise, Seattle puts together a bullpen as good as any. I'm not worried. Yeah, Munoz, Brash, Bizardo. The bullpen's still fresh, still good. Offensively, though, this team struck out at way too high of a clip to not need to add some contact hitters. Cal Raleigh had an MVP season, still strikes out a very high clip. Randy Arozarena, he's a 20-25 home run stolen base guy seemingly every single season, has one of the highest strikeout percentages in baseball. Josh Naylor, another guy that has a higher strikeout percentage across his career. A lot of swing and miss in this lineup. And that's what worries me, especially when Seattle even went to the playoffs. They got hot, and they got hot at the right time, which is why they were able to make such a deep run. But you need some more contact hitters in this lineup. I don't know what direction they're going to go, but I think there's still a lot of swing and miss offensively. They need to get some other ways to add some offense, even if it is someone smaller like a Luis Ariz per se. And I'm not exactly like a huge advocate for Luis Ariz just because, you know, how much value do you put in the batting average these days? It's very subjective. But a guy like that who can put contact on the baseball every single time, a guy that can put the ball in play, he can move a runner over. I think that can prove hugely beneficial for Seattle, especially in clutch time.
The other guy that's getting a lot of conversation around the Mariners is Brendan Donovan of the Cardinals. We talk about Marte, but we also talk about Donovan. And this one's so interesting to me. He would cost less than Marte would, but I also think Cole Young in 3 years is just what Brendan Donovan is. A guy who has a good eye, good plate discipline, puts the ball in play, hits to the gaps. And it's like, do I want to trade away a guy who's going to become Brendan Donovan in order to get Brendan Donovan right now? And that feels like the debate probably going on in the front office. What's your thought on Donovan and kind of what he might bring to the Mariners?
Yeah, I would argue that if you're looking to hopefully get a guy that hits his stride 3 years from now, at least in Seattle's position, I think you're missing the mark. I think right now you have a fresh starting rotation and bullpen that are World Series capable. And the last thing that you want to do, I mean, that's the hardest thing to put together in baseball. Look what the Giants did in 2021. Look at what the Minnesota Twins have done in recent years. Like, you can put together a lineup that is capable of getting you through a 162-game season. With how much analytics plays a part in baseball nowadays, with how in-depth these front offices can be, they can find lightning in a bottle players, Rule 5 players that come. Like one that comes to mind is Trace Thompson that the Dodgers brought over a couple years ago. Like, you can bring over some Trace Thompsons. All of a sudden, your lineup is capable. What you can't do is you cannot really statistically, analytically, you can't just luck together a starting rotation as World Series capable. Seattle, they didn't luck together this rotation. They have built this rotation to be World Series capable along with that bullpen. Now, offensively, they just need to add to it and add some talent. I don't think waiting for a Cole Young to develop, for Leo Rivas to develop, I don't think that should be the strategy. I think the window for championship contending is right now. I mean, shoot, 1 game away here in 2025. If the opportunity is there and you're not giving up any of your current right now productive players, I think, Cole Young, for example, is if I'm making that deal, I'm at least considering him in that package.
You know, it's interesting. In addition to roster turnover, the Mariners have had a number of coaching turnover positions this offseason, right? Chris Negron, their third base coach, goes to Pittsburgh. Austin Nola, old catcher, comes back to be the bullpen coach. One of the more interesting hires Mariners made about a week and a half ago was Jake McKinley, who was the former Division I baseball coach at Nevada. And I admittedly know nothing about him. He's going to be the on-field coordinator, field coordinator for the Mariners, but he seems to come with some relatively high praise. You know him personally. Did you play for him at one of his stops prior to Nevada?
I did, yeah. So he got his first head coaching gig over at Menlo College, which is over in the Bay Area. It's right down the street from Stanford. It's an NAIA baseball program. Had a lot of success at Menlo. He then came over to what's called Jessup University, which is out in the Sacramento region. That's where I play. I played there for 2 years. I had in my senior year. We actually, largely due to Jake's ability to build culture immediately, we went, I think to this day, it's the greatest turnaround in college baseball history, regardless of division. So Division I, Division II, Division III, NCAA, junior college, and NAIA. Jake McKinley was the head coach of the greatest turnaround. My first year at Jessup, we went, I want to say it was like 11-40. My next year, we went like 40-11. We were one game away from the NAIA World Series, and Jake was our head guy for that year.
I know what that's like. It was at Division III, Oswego State University. Went 1-17 in the SUNYAC conference my junior year. Senior year, new head coach. Went 8-8. You would have thought that we had gone to the Division III World Series. They went to the Division III World Series just a few years later. So I know something about turnarounds and kind of how they work. What makes Jake McKinley so special? You mentioned culture building. What is it that allows him to connect with players and people?
It's not just players. I think it's coaching staff too. Like if you look at Jake's career, it wasn't as if he was this perennial all-star player. It's not as if he has this baseball mind that is completely figured out the baseball formula. He's a very smart guy. He helped me. Like I was a splitter pitcher. That was my best off-speed pitch. He was a splitter pitcher. He helped me tweak some grips, and I was able to finally make that a really good pitch for me as an arm. But what Jake does so well is he surrounds himself with really good people, and he networks better than anybody. And so his ability, like you look at what he did over at University of Nevada, which was his previous stop here before Seattle. You look at what he did at Jessup University, even when he was over at Sac State as an assistant with Menlo. He has made connections with smart baseball minds, including guys like Jason Ochart. Jason Ochart is considered one of the biggest influences in the driveline program up in Washington. He was the former driveline hitting instructor for I think 5 or 6 years. He then went on to become minor league hitting coordinator at the Phillies. I'm not sure where Jason's at anymore, but Jason was the hitting coach at Menlo when Jake McKinley was the head coach at Menlo. Similarly, pitching wise, he has networking and connections with scouts throughout. So he was able to get recruits, especially through scouts. So for example, we had a guy named Andrew Shaps. He was a number 3 hitter for Arizona State. He had some personal issues that he was dealing with down at Arizona, and he was deemed ineligible for the NCAA. He was able to find him through a scout that he knew. It was a Los Angeles Dodgers scout at the time. And then he was able to recruit Andrew Shaps over to our ball club, and he became a massive, massive influence on us. And Jake's ability to get the most out of his talent while also getting the right people and building that culture, I think that's the winning formula. And talent goes a long way. You need talent to win ball games, but if you're able to get talented guys while also having the right mindset and the right people skills, I think that's what really connects everything. Is you get your talent, but you also get guys that are willing to buy in to the team formula.
Again, we as fans, we as media members never know exactly what the on-field coordinator is responsible for, but you look at the clubhouse the Mariners have, Dan Wilson, Manny Acta, Perry Hill, you add Jake McKinley to that, Kevin Seitzer. It's a really good coaching group. It's a really good kind of young veteran core of players. They do have something special in that clubhouse, and I was there a bunch in 2025. So to add just another good person to that clubhouse, it sounds cliche, but it's important to not mess up what they already had and then go and add to it, which sounds like Jake McKinley is going to do.
And my understanding, too, is that Jake, so he was originally, his first big league job was with the Milwaukee Brewers back in 2019 to 2022. I might have those years off. But he was during 2020, during COVID, obviously minor leagues, they didn't have a season that year. So he was in charge of their minor league camp that they did. They were basically doing scrimmages every single day for their minor league players to keep them active. He was a huge influence on guys like Jason Alexander. Alexander actually pitched for him when he was at Menlo. Then he went undrafted, and Alexander's now kind of been a fill-in rotation guy. But without McKinley's help, I would imagine Alexander would not have even been sniffing the big leagues. But he was incredibly influential with him. They signed Jackson Churio that same either the year before McKinley was there, or it might have been the year McKinley started. But I remember talking with Jake about Churio and just asking, like, how good is this kid? It was when Churio signed his extension. And McKinley said, like, McKinley took no credit for Churio's development. He basically said, like, Churio's a superstar. Like, this kid is going to be unbelievable. And sure enough, Churio at 22 years old is becoming an incredible outfielder for the Brewers. But a lot like the Bryce Terangs, that entire young Milwaukee Brewers lineup, Jake had a huge help in their development because a lot of those guys were in the minor leagues during that 2020 season, and he was in charge of everything. So his ability to develop young players, not just at the college level, but seemingly at the big league level as well. I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Mariners made a couple of new coaching additions this offseason, including a new third base coach. Jake McKinley, again, is the on-field coordinator. I'm hopefully going to get a chance to connect with him in person down in Peoria in spring training, only about 2 months from now. Danny Vietti, CBS Sports, the Wake and Rake podcast, and a great follow on social media. We'll throw his handle in the podcast notes description as well. Danny, man, much appreciated. As we were talking off air, you said you were always down to talk Mariners. I'm going to make you regret that, and we'll hit you up again in a few months. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me, Brady. Thank you.
Absolutely. There he goes. That's Danny Vietti. We will put his social media handle in the podcast notes, but it is at Danny Vietti. Pretty simple. Vietti. Vietti. Danny Vietti. Look, I admit, right, we don't know exactly what an on-field coordinator does or will do for the Seattle Mariners, but I am in favor of people who come in with good resumes. I am in favor of people who come in with positive references, and I am in favor of the Seattle Mariners hiring good people. I was around the Mariners a bunch in 2025, right? I think I went to 30 games, and I was around them in spring training for a week plus also. It's very evident the core group of Mariners coaches are good people and good people who care. And I'm not going to tell you that other teams don't have that too. But when you have a great clubhouse, it's important to not screw it up. When you have a great coaching dynamic, it's important to not screw it up. And it sounds like Jake McKinley is a positive addition to that coach's room. I think Austin Nola will be a positive addition to that coach's room. I think that pairing with Seitzer and Manny Acta and Perry Hill and Dan Wilson, those are good people, and Jake McKinley seems to be a part of it as well. I love hearing about a guy who can connect with people. I love hearing about a guy who is connected, who has something to offer people. So we will see. And again, it'll be about 2 months from now until I'm on the field with the Mariners in Peoria, Arizona, and we will see, if we can talk, get Jake on the podcast then. But look, I think Danny Vietti played for him, so he would know him very, very well, and he's only grown since then, because that was at this point now about 8 years ago or so. He's only grown since then. So very, very impressive stuff from Jake McKinley. I do want to go back real quick to the third base discussion, because I don't think I did it justice. So let me kind of reiterate this and bring in one other piece of news on it. If the Mariners bring back Polanco and they have Cole Young at second and either Williamson or Emerson at third, I think you would have 2 question marks in your lineup. And I'm not really in favor of having 2 question marks. Now, I do trust that Cole Young will figure it out at some point in the 2026 season. Is that going to be April or is that going to be August? I don't know. But I think he is going to, I think he has the ability, if he plays every day, to have a reasonably good year and an additive year to the Mariners offense. But I acknowledge he's a question mark. If they bring in Polanco and go get Brendan Donovan, then I think they are left with 1 question mark on offense, and that would be third base. And I am fine entering the season with 1 question mark. And if the Mariners are able to do these other things, I don't think they have any reason to go after Eugenio Suarez again, right? Because I think they're okay having one question mark. One question mark is okay in a lineup. Even good teams have one question mark. So I don't think Geno is really a fit for the Mariners, especially if they're able to do these other things. If they're not able to do these other things, if Jorge Polanco signs somewhere else, and if they're not able to trade for Donovan or Marte, then I think they circle back to Geno and say, look, we now have room. We have room at DH. We have a little room at third. We have a little room maybe for you to be a backup first baseman and play first against some lefties. Then I think it becomes a possibility. But I don't think that Geno is, a gotta have on the top of the list guy for the Mariners right now. The other thing that's interesting about third base, and Adam Jude, I believe it was Adam, had this over at the Seattle Times today. I don't think it was Divish. I think it was Adam, but they've been collaborating a lot. So I'm not sure which one had the byline here. I think it was Adam. Scott Boras went to the Mariners about Alex Bregman and said that Alex Bregman is basically willing to play in Seattle. And now, Mariners didn't seem to have much interest in Bregman last offseason. And I don't think Bregman had interest in the Mariners really last offseason. Maybe things have changed now that the Mariners have gotten to the ALCS and that the Mariners, in his eyes, have an opening at third base. I don't believe that Scott Boras or Alex Bregman are interested in the Mariners for a second. Okay, I don't believe that the Mariners and Alex Bregman will happen. I don't think we should even really waste our time talking about it. Right? I think it's that simple. I believe that Alex Bregman and his representation are using the Mariners for leverage because Scott Boras is upset that Bregman is not the belle of the ball right now. Ketel Marte and Brendan Donovan are generating a whole lot of conversation. Alex Bregman is not generating that kind of conversation. And Scott Boras is looking to push people into action, right? We know the Red Sox want Bregman, but they're not necessarily beating down the door to sign him today. Now, given that they've missed out on Schwarber and Pete Alonso, maybe they'll get a little more desperate on Bregman, but they haven't pushed those desperate panic buttons just yet. So if Scott Boras goes to Seattle, starts a conversation, he can go back to Boston and say, hey, we talked to the Mariners yesterday, right? We talked to the Mariners yesterday, and you better hurry or else you're going to lose out on Bregman. I think that's exactly what this is about. Mariners have already paid Naylor. Mariners are trying to pay Polanco. If the Mariners are content to have Emerson and Williamson at third, I don't think they need to force the issue on Bregman. I don't think they're making, as I just told you, I don't think they're making calls on third baseman here. They're making calls on Polanco and maybe on second baseman. I'm sure maybe Bregman would want to play for the Mariners, given that the Mariners are now good and are established as good and are going to enter the season as the American League West favorites. But I don't think the Mariners will pay him. I don't think the Mariners think they need him. And I think this is totally a tactic by Boras to kind of spur the Red Sox into action. I don't buy this for a second, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. Now, let's end our talk here as we have kind of speculated upon. Mariners are going to have a number of players playing in the World Baseball Classic. We know that Cal Raleigh is in. We know that Julio will be in. We know that Randy Arozarena is in. We expect Andres Munoz to be in. So that is, let's see, Cal, Julio, Arozarena, Munoz. That's 4. Sounds like we expect Matt Brash and Josh Naylor to be in. That's 6. Michael Arroyo we expect in. That's 7. Edward Bizardo, it sounds like, is being anticipated to play for Venezuela, as I have anticipated. That would be 8. And then any of your pitchers have a chance to be selected for Team USA, I would think. Could get you to 9, 10, 11, 12. Who knows? Right? Gerangelo Saincha sounds like might pitch for the Netherlands. Dom Canzone, I think, is eligible to play for Italy. So there's a lot of pieces moving here in the World Baseball Classic. The one thing that's the most interesting is that Team Canada is trying to get James Paxton to come out of retirement. He retired after the 24 season. Canada wants James Paxton to come and pitch. They said they don't need him for a full 162. They need him for just a handful of games in March. So we'll see if the Big Maple, who's never pitched in the World Baseball Classic, is willing to come out of retirement. Elsewhere, Baseball America released their top 10 rankings for the Mariners, top 10 prospect rankings updated. No major surprises. Colt Emerson is 1, Cade Anderson is 2, Las Montes is 3. The surprise came, Ryan Sloan is 4, Michael Arroyo is 5. Johnny Farmello is 6. In the 7th spot is Saintja. 8 is Luke Stevenson, the catcher. And really, that's where the surprise kind of is to me, that Luke Stevenson is at 8 and Felnine Celestine is at 9. Celestine's star seems to have fallen a bit here. Okay, seems to have fallen a bit. We have been thinking that he's an impact player and he could be a true stud. And maybe he will. He's only 20 years old. But he's falling further down the rankings. He's out of the top 100, I believe, at MLB Pipeline. He will not be in the top 100, I believe, at Baseball America when the full top 100 gets released. He's below Luke Stevenson, who's a catcher who's played no higher than single A, who the Mariners drafted last year. So kind of interesting just to see how the prospect world shakes out. Ty Pete was 10th, but 1 is Colt Emerson and 2 is Cade Anderson. All right, that is going to do it for us. I want to thank everybody who has watched live on YouTube or on X. Full audio version will be put out momentarily on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I want to thank Danny Vietti from CBS Sports for stopping by and the Wake and Rake podcast. Remember, over my right shoulder here, we have the QR code. Join our free Mariners community at Roundtable Sports. That's how myself and Taryn Kovac, that is how we make our living. We appreciate everybody who knows our site exists, who goes to it regularly, who shares our content, who tells people about our content. You will see more and more of Taryn and I. We have a partnership with Yahoo Sports. If you go to Yahoo's Mariners page, and you'll see our faces all over the place there. It's been fun to build this thing. We're continuing to grow. Join that community. Join the conversation. Talk to us. Talk to other Mariners fans. Comment on our stories. Listen to the podcast. Whatever you can do to support us, we appreciate. And hopefully we give it back to you in the form of great content and a great podcast experience. Again, thanks to Danny Vietti. Buster Olney on tomorrow. Just the interview. No full podcast. And we'll be back at it again with full episodes next week. So one last comment for the road. We have our friend Carol, who has reposted this stream on X. Well, we appreciate that, Carol. And we appreciate everybody who listens. As always, go M's.